All right, so I've moved back into my apartment, back in Nashville, ready to fuck shit up this semester. I guess, I don't know. I'm almost done, so I'm happy about that. But topic of today's video is like this concept of like artist suffering and like artist martyrdom. So like throughout history, or at least throughout modern history, there's kind of this view of like the tortured artist to like the point where, background on this video. I was reading a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I will put up here, edited in afterwards. But basically, in that book, she talks about how there's kind of this image of like the artist martyr and like the suffering artist, and how, she even had like an English teacher tell her that she hadn't suffered enough to like write, like just in general, like not even like to succeed and sell, but just to write in general, like she hadn't suffered enough. And she is like, I guess she is a best-selling artist. One of her books had a movie made after, like she's going crazy. She's, done it all. But basically she cites this like one part of her book where she was saying that jazz musicians back in like the 40s and 50s would go as far to like fake they were on heroin to like, or morphine to like imitate these other jazz musicians that were more successful that were also on morphine. And like since then, just this kind of idea of like the tormented, struggling, like suffering artist has made it seem like you must like suffer to create good art, which is obviously not the case. I mean, like we've seen people like Kanye in our modern day, suffered from mental illnesses that have just gone, he's not gone for help, he's not, worked out himself, those problems, like it's just gone downhill so much, and so has his art. Like, as much as I loved, I can't even remember it, Donda, as much as I love Donda, and like even Ye wasn't that bad, but like his newer albums, it's obviously gone down in quality. Like they were great and it's cool and he's trying new things, but like, the mixing's off, or he'll have to re-release it like 4 times, or, something will happen where he embarrasses himself on stage and it messes everything. Like, the man is obviously going downhill. So you can't tell me that you need to suffer to become a better artist, because he's obviously suffering and he's collapsing like right in front of us. So what she says in her book basically is like, hey, why would you want to degrade yourself and like disconcern yourself and suffer when you could improve yourself and improve your art, improve your output, and then all of a sudden everything gets better? Why like, and you'll see it too, especially in like the 70s and 60s, like this whole idea of like writers with cigarettes and a typewriter and like a line of coke, and like, you don't need that to be successful and to really like stand out and, get your art out to people. And I think that's something that especially like Tyler, the Creator, really pushes, because he has always been someone who's like, yeah, like I'm constantly trying to improve myself. He's not someone that's like, oh, poor me, like, even Igor, like Igor is a very emotional, like sad album, but you never listen to Igor and you're like, oh damn, like, Tyler's like self-pitying. He's just like getting his emotions out there. He's not suffering. It's kind of like this exercise of him pushing everything out so he can improve. Like it was something he needed to get better. And then Call Me If You Get Lost comes out, and it's like, oh fuck, like, he went through this whole like breakup and all this shit, and then look at him afterwards, he's kicking ass. So, I mean, that honestly, that's a great example of hedonic adaptation now that I think about it. But I also had written down that a lot of people don't trust that their work loves them back. And this is like a very kind of like foo-foo fluffy topic, but like basically what I'm saying is, if you ask someone that was writing, would they say that their writing or their work that they're writing loves them back? Would they be like, oh yeah, like, I'm writing a manuscript or like an essay or like a book, and I feel like my book loves me back. Like I'm putting all this love and all this work into it, and my book loves me back. Most of the time they wouldn't say that. They'd be like, yeah, like I'm suffering. I'm, scrounging together trying to put this shit, like, and the only way it's going to be good is if I, really put myself through hell to get it out there. When really, like, you don't have to do that. If you trust that your work loves you back, then you'll be set. Another thing she points out is that when you're working people always kind of talk about their creative work or like their entities as like their babies. She's like, no, don't. Once it's out there, set it free. Don't be protective over it. You know, you can command respect for it and, you know, want respect back, but don't be out there being overprotective and like wishy-washy and on ice whenever someone, you know, criticizes it or something. Be proud that's out there. Be proud that you made it. Move on to the next thing. You know, this, like, it's just, she writes it out very well, just saying how, you know, this whole path of like, you know, assuming that you're going to suffer and go through so much pain while you're making something creative is just, it's kind of bullshit, you know? And the people who start out as beginners in anything usually know this very well. You know, like if someone were to just take up drawing as a hobby, they'd be like, oh yeah, it's just a way for me to, you know, pass the time and, you know, not think about stuff. Whereas someone who's been drawing for years will be like, this is my life. This is so, like, I'm gonna die if this, you know, doesn't come out. And I, you know, like it's killing me in the inside. And that's like, that's not real love, you know? Like, you kind of have to have this mindset that even when you've had success, you're a beginner at all times. Because if you have the mindset of wanting to constantly improve and get better and, you know, love what you're putting out, you'll progress so much more than someone that's like killing themselves over the work. So don't suffer. Focus on your shit. Improve your art. Improve yourself.
Pizza.